Against Newcastle, it all just clicked. There was a tactical plan, an identity, a purpose to West Ham's approach, and the players actually looked like they knew what they were on the pitch to do and showed the hunger to do it. Those are the wise words of one of the wisest men that I know, James Jones of the We Are West Ham podcast, in his BBC Sport column for this week, waxing lyrical over the mighty Hammers and their 2-0 victory away at Newcastle United on Monday night. I, Will Pugh, have never been as certain that my beloved Hammers were going to lose a football game in all of my life. And out of nowhere, a 2-0 victory. James Jones, I'm delighted to have your face in front of mine again after the international break. I spoke to Aaron Stokes in the build-up of the Newcastle Chronicle, the Magpies correspondent. He was quietly confident, or fairly loudly confident, actually. I was pretty certain that it was going to be a defeat, and far from it. It was a resounding victory, and as you wrote in your column, and I'm sure are going to tell me all about on the podcast this week, an excellent performance too.
Yeah, mate, it was. I was like you. I sat down on my sofa at 10 to 8 yesterday, turned the TV on, clicked on the game, and said in my head, "This is going to be a long night." Just because and then the kind of, when the players are walking out on the pitch and they're still in the studio on Monday Night Football and they're kind of still talking to Theo Walcott and Jamie Carragher, David Jones, and basically I think David Jones goes to Theo Walcott. Do you give West Ham any hope of stopping Alexander Isak tonight? I said, what can they do? And he just went, no. Just one word, no. And it was like,
no. Can we go watch the game now? I'm not answering silly questions anymore.
Yeah, Walcott was just adamant that it was just going to be a thrashing. And I was like, oh God, they must have been absolutely hammering us in the build-up and all the pre-match analysis and discussion, and they were apparently. So it's gonna be a long night. And then Isaac scores, but he's ruled offside within 4 minutes, and I'm like, yeah, this is bad. This is bad. And then things just clicked, and it worked. Yeah. And I can't remember the last time I finished watching a West Ham game and went, I bloody enjoyed that. It was jolly fun. I just enjoyed watching it. We were really good. We rode waves of pressure. Defensively, really organised. The Aaron Wan-Bissaka experiment seemed to. I mean, it was still the same experiment, but it worked this time. It worked so much. He even scored his third goal in his entire career. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. And it all seemed to be born out the fact that he dropped Guido Rodriguez. Who would have thought?
Yeah, and so, turns out shock horror Thomas Suchek is good, but
So fair enough. It as I said in my column, and you kind of alluded to there at the beginning, it seemed like the players had finally, like the penny had dropped in their head exactly what they've been asked to do, and they were doing it, and they looked like they were pleased that they were doing it as well, and they were like, we understand now, and it works, and I think I said at the end of my column, if we get a similar performance against Arsenal, I'm not expecting us to beat Arsenal now, but if we get a similar performance, then I think we might be on the right track to going. This could work, but maybe it won't. We don't know. It's one game. It's positive. It's positive.
James Jones, after finally on the last podcast saying the words, "Look, I don't think this is going to work," plonked firmly back on the fence. Legs are straddled.
I just think it's funny that
you ventured off it for 1 week, one podcast, and then get me back on there.
The build up to the game was all around. He's been given 2 games to save his job, and even Pep Guardiola would go, "What? Those 2 games in Newcastle away and Arsenal at home? You're having a laugh now, really?"
Yeah. AKA, you're sacked.
Yeah, basically. And I was just like, well, he's passed off the test already, and I'm going, well, hang on. He's pulled it out the bag here. So yeah, I don't want to get too excited, but it wasn't a lucky win like the one against Man United. We fully deserved it.
No.
And that's what makes me think, oh, is something happening?
Yeah. So, well, look. Now is the time to sort of, in the interest of full transparency, I didn't watch the game because I was at the Northwest Football Awards last night. Believe it or not, I met Joe, from friend of the podcast, from the Turfcast, the Burnley podcast, who's they've been our opposition view when Burnley were in the Premier League, of course, for several years now. Really nice bloke, and he just come up to me midway through and he said, "Is it Will?" He said, "Oh, yes," when it was. I had a good old chat to him and his dad. So that was enjoyable. But yeah, the Northwest Football Awards, hosted by Elid Barber and Dion Dublin, who refused my request to interview him about Homes Under the Hammer. Or I was going to do like a social media thing of, like when you see the football, like social media, like clips on, I don't know, like Talk Sport or whatever, where they interview fans, or they'll interview Anthony Joshua and they do like, right, last man standing, Tyson Fury or Frank Bruno, and it says Tyson Fury, and it's like Tyson Fury or Mike Tyson, so on. I was going to do that with Dion Dublin, like, right, last home improvement standing, and be like loft conversion or conservatory, like loft conversion or underfloor heating throughout all your tiled rooms. Like, what better? Yeah, he was absolutely not interested. No, couldn't have cared less. Kobe Mainoo was supposed to turn up, so I was hoping to interview him. He didn't show, so it was a long old trip to Manchester. For very little return. But I did have a nice evening with Alex Crook from Talk Sport, who has been on the podcast previously as well, talking a few interesting conversations about goings on at West Ham behind the scenes. Jonesy, not unfortunately for publication, but a few eyebrows were raised, put it that way, on both sides. So, yeah, I didn't watch the game. That was my long way of saying I didn't watch the game. I mean, I say this has been booked in for a while, so I was never going to be able to watch it. But I must admit, I got offered a ticket a few weeks ago as well. And I say, if I wasn't already going to this, I think I'd replied to my mate who offered me a ticket and said I'd rather eat glass than go all the way up to the other end of the country on a freezing cold Monday night in November and watch us inevitably lose 3-0. So, yeah, pleasantly surprised. So, James, I want this podcast this week for you to, and people will probably be delighted at this pleasant change, for you to do the majority of the talking. So, question one. Because we'll look a bit holistically first, and then we'll do a bit of a breakdown of the game. I've been told in no uncertain terms by Mark Scott, regular listener and messenger as well, that if he has to listen to another debate about, I think his words were hypothetical debate about whether David Moyes, what David Moyes would or wouldn't be doing and whether it would have been a good idea to keep him, he's never listening again. So I can promise everyone, especially as we've won now, I'm going to bench that content for a while. But I've had an awful lot of messages from people saying that they've been loving the content recently, and that they see the points from both sides and they're really enjoying the pod. So that's good news. Did watch the game, James. So question one, basically, have I and loads of other fans been a total football Neanderthal in recent weeks by not seeing that actually there's nothing wrong with Julen Lopetegui's system, and it's all about to click soon once the players understand it, which, according to your BBC Sport column and your words just now, is exactly what happened. And is this the answer, and is this the way after all?
I think it clicked.
Do you want me to answer for you? And you go, maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. I'm not sure yet.
No, it clicked, but obviously it wasn't 100% perfect.
Right.
But it seemed a lot more organised. It seemed like the players knew their roles. They knew their jobs. The midfield was the most.
What were they? Give me a couple of examples then. Like,
Well,
I mean, what were you seeing that was good?
Well, the midfield was the clearest example. It was the most balanced we've seen it this season. And I know every time Carlos Soler has played, everyone's going, well, what position is he actually playing? Well, he was playing at number 10 yesterday.
Right. And then with what, Paqueta and Souček?
Souček was playing the deepest of the other, of the two of those behind Soler.
Yeah.
But wasn't dropping too deep. He was off. I mean, we've seen it a lot where Edson Alvarez has ended up as a third centre back at times to cover Wan-Bissaka.
Yeah.
Wan-Bissaka was going forward, but not as forward as he has been known to be.
Not offensively forward.
But when he has been going forward, it's when we've been in possession and looking dangerous. He hasn't been just running forward, trying to press a winger and just basically being caught out,
leaving vast gaps of space behind.
And that was evidence in the goal. And in the post-match analysis, Jamie Carragher rightly pointed out, most fullbacks in that position they do an overlap around the winger. Instead, he ran inside and offered Bowen something a little bit different, which is clearly what he's been told to do,
don't they?
Suddenly it was like, well, hang on, we've not seen that before. That works. The midfield just looks a lot more balanced, a lot more clean. Soler was, pressing when he needed to press, but holding off when he needed to. In possession, he was really economical. Like it was like, well, this I haven't seen the West Ham like this for a while.
Right.
Antonio up front was often isolated. That was a slight concern for me. But then every now and then got the better of Lloyd Kelly. And Lloyd Kelly had a bit of a tussle throughout the game.
I saw he got his shirt off his shoulders, basically.
Yeah. And there were times when I was like, we are just lumping it forward a little bit.
Right.
But even going as far back as Fabianski, there was a lot of times, and I've not seen this, a lot of times where we insisted on playing out from the back. And it was a bit ropey at times. There's one point where Fabianski had two. He was literally on his goal line. He had two Newcastle players around him. And somehow he got out of it, and I'm like, just kick it.
Yeah.
But we were trying to play out from the back a little bit. And sometimes teams that aren't used to playing out for the back or aren't good enough to be playing out for the back get caught out.
AKA West Ham on both fronts.
But we didn't get caught out, and we managed to 9 times out of 10 make something of that and turn it into an attack or keep possession. Defensively we were good. The players were. I think it was collectively the players ran the second furthest of any team in any game in the Premier League. I think second only to Tottenham in one of their games. It was 117 kilometres. I think it's like 6 kilometres more than our second best. So clearly they were running further. They were putting a lot more into it. It just seemed like there was method to the madness almost, if you know what I mean. And it just before we've been watching it and going, we don't really know what's going on here. And I don't think the players going on. Yeah. So now every time we had the ball, you could kind of work out exactly what they wanted to do with it. And some of the combination play, particularly between Paqueta, Emerson, Soler was getting involved with it. Bowen was back to his brilliant best, running at defenders, beating players. There weren't many complaints to come out of it.
No,
we were getting caught quite a lot with their pace, Newcastle's pace. And when Harvey Barnes came on, I got incredibly worried. Because what he's like.
Did we see Aaron Wan-Bissaka actually doing some defending by the sound?
He did a lot of defending. He wasn't caught out of position once that I can recall.
Was Souček sort of coming back to cover that space then at times, or was he just not as far forward as before? Yeah,
he didn't really need to, which allowed then it ensured that we had at least 2 men in midfield at all times.
Yeah.
There would have been 1 or 2 times where he would have had to drop deep. But 9 times out of 10, Wan-Bissaka was where he needed to be.
Yeah, right.
And if he was getting forward, then he was getting back quicker. and he wasn't caught out of possession.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been annoying me about him. And I think a lot of people echo the sentiments. Like, he tends to do a lot of jogging back, and it's like, you're quite far up the pitch there, mate, and they're attacking down your side. Maybe sprint.
The good thing is that there weren't many times where he had to sprint back.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is a surprise because Newcastle have got some talented players. But Gordon play on the left, I assume.
No, Gordon played out on the right.
Oh, right.
Or did he play out on the left? I can't remember.
Well, according to Google, he played on the left. He usually plays on the left, doesn't he?
No, he did play on the left. No, yeah, he did. Right, he did.
Joe Linton and Isaac. That's what I mean. Like, I was thinking of all the games that we're going to get a Tonkin with Anthony Gordon playing in that left wing position. If you afford him loads of space, that's not really what you want to be doing.
Yeah. So. Well, in the first half, they were getting a lot of balls over the top to Isaac, and he was running in behind him. He got caught offside for his goal ever so slightly. I mean, it was like borderline.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
But in the second half, we were really restricting him to crosses into the box. And Tadibo and Kilman had those covered, and Mavropanos came out for Kilman. Could have given away a penalty. I don't know if you've seen it.
I saw that. Yeah, I've seen the highlights. Yeah,
I was a little bit.
That's one of them. It's a bit like, it was properly.
When he went to VAR, the ref, here we go.
So did the ref give anything or not?
Ref didn't give anything, but it went for a VAR check. And the moment
really?
It was I was going to VAR, and I was like, oh no, here we go. They're going to.
I think that is one of them, though. That isn't like. Because it's half and half. If the ref hasn't given anything, that's not clear and obvious error.
Well, that's why. I was like,
explanation.
That's the explanation.
Like, that's not blatant. The ref would have seen the incident with his eyes. So if he said, no pen for me, it's not like that wasn't a stone wall. Oh, you've missed a clanger there, mate. That was just like all right, if you've seen that, you don't think it was fine, I guess.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they said. They said, the VAR deemed it not to be clear and obvious. But then even he brought Emerson off for Soufal and swapped Soufal and Wan-Bissaka. So Wan-Bissaka closed the game out at left back.
Right. Big Vlad doing the attacking prowess like he was born to do.
By then, I think he came on with the last maybe 10 minutes. And by then we weren't doing a great deal of attacking.
Right.
But what was really refreshing is that we weren't sitting back. It wasn't 10 men behind the ball, what we used to. Let's sit on the lead.
Yeah.
Because, the countless times we've seen us, we go 1-0 up away from home and we go, right, lovely, we'll have that.
Yeah. That's us. And then we lose 2-1 because we're sitting back.
Not playing anymore. But this time we didn't. We attacked, even at 2-0, we had opportunities. We had chances at 2-0 and we were really going for it. And we just picked our moments. But defensively it was really good. Going in possession, it was really good. Going forward, it was really good. Paqueta was his best game of the season, back to his best.
Which I mean, low bar to be fair, but
that is also he got man of the match. And there were times when he did some silly little back heel flicks, but that's Paqueta
trying to impress his mate Bruno Guimaraes, was he?
Yeah, in dangerous. I think he gave the ball away in our half by doing a couple of flicks a few times. But he won the second ball that led to the second goal, and he played really well. So.
Great.
No complaints from me.
Good news. Right, James, we've got to try and get a bit better at actually putting the clear sections into these podcasts because, poor old Alex doesn't know where to put the adverts. So we'll have a break now. We'll come back with a bit more detailed analysis of that Newcastle win next, a bit more about where it leaves us, the bigger picture stuff, and of course, there was also some quotes from Vladimir Soufal which come out in the week saying he's going to have to look at the situation if he's sat on the bench all the time. Quite understand what he's saying. So we'll have a chat about all of that next as well, and a brief look ahead to the Arsenal game on the weekend. Arsenal at home Saturday night, 5:30, I believe that one. Jonesy at London Stadium. We'll have an opposition view later this week. I'm hoping to speak to the Deluded Gooner, big Arsenal YouTuber, friend of mine, friend of the podcast, previous guest, I believe. So, we'll have a podcast ahead of the Arsenal game later this week. But me and James have a brief chat about that later in this podcast. Don't forget to follow us on social media at @WeAre_West Ham on Twitter, We Are West Ham Pod on Instagram. You can email us at wearewesthampod@gmail.com. I don't know what else you could do. Buy us a pint if you want at buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham. Basically. Oh, and subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch these podcasts as well. Have them on in the background with mine and Jonesy's face looming over you if you so wish. Do all of those things and stay with us for more positivity on the We Are West Ham podcast for the first time in a while. Next, Jim Odie has been in touch. James, in the emails, wearewesthampod@gmail.com. Well, the world is certainly a lot brighter place with 3 points, especially as they were gained away at Newcastle. Bring on the Gooners on Saturday. It's the hope that kills us. Yeah, I mean, me and James are sort of somewhat. We try not to be too reactionary and too pendulumy, swinging from one way to the other. Although James, as we've established, after a week off the fence, has launched himself straight back on it this week. But I would sort of warn, issue a little bit of caution, or advise a little bit of caution there, Jim. Bring on the Gooners seems a bit of a strong stance to take after the win at Newcastle. James, defensively, because that's sort of been my main one of many, but sort of my main concern, I think, this season, if I had to just pick one, was how exposed we've looked at the back, how easy we've been to slice through. I've said all along that I feel that was a midfield issue rather than, any sort of reflection on Todibo, Kilman or Emerson. A midfield issue plus Aaron Wan-Bissaka, the experiment we've been talking about, and him being vastly out of position for most of the season, well up the pitch. What do we look like defensively? Were we exposed? Were we better? Did we still sort of give chances away? Is it one of them, a bit like Crystal Palace, where lots of fans who were there said it was awful first half, we could easily have been 2-0 down? I think Eze maybe at the woodwork, and then Mateta, I think, missed a clear-cut chance, and then we went on, obviously, a sort of bit of a smash and grab rather than a dominant performance. Did we look sort of exposed at the back? Did Newcastle have a lot of clear-cut chances still? We limited them to 2 shots on target, but 18 shots in total, and you've been put in your place about the shots on goal thing, so we're not having that. We're not having that one again. What do we look like at the back or defensively?
I mean, apart from, and I think I mentioned it in the last section, that there were a couple of times, especially in the first half, where they were getting in behind us. Isaac was getting in behind us a little bit. Yeah. But beyond that, we weren't being cut open. We were very, very solid. In the
how were we doing that? What was it? Just the midfield? It sounds like we were running a lot more, which I don't.
There was a lot more. Yeah, we were running a hell of a lot more. Weirdly, we were playing a quite a high line, which again I'm not really used to seeing us do. It was quite a high line. It wasn't as high as Tottenham. We were basically they line up basically in the other half.
Yeah, but more so than what perhaps we've been used to seeing.
Yeah, and I don't know whether that just
more
kind
compact under Moyes.
It made. I mean, I don't. Like I've said before, I'm not great at talking tactics, as well as some other podcasts, but it just seemed like we were reducing Newcastle's midfield opportunities and time on the ball in midfield. There were a few times where they broke through, but we kept Gordon quiet. He was incredibly quiet. He barely even knew he was on the pitch. Even when Harvey Barnes came on, didn't really threaten us as much as he has done in the past. Right. They ended up going 2 up top, and that really didn't do much either. Callum Wilson, who loves a goal against us, didn't really threaten.
No, why?
Not even. I don't think he had a shot on goal at all.
It was him, the Mavropanos penalty that was on, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, but we just looked a lot more organised. We played a little bit higher up. The midfield was running a lot more and pressing a lot more, which is just giving the opposition less time, giving Newcastle less time to play through it. Todibo and Kilman reading the game pretty well. Kilman, again, is just solid, 9 out of 10. Todibo had one little brain fart in the first half where he miskicked a clearance.
Right. I think I saw that, and they nearly scored, didn't they? Yeah.
They nearly
dodgy
scored.
Back pass or whatever.
But that, and I think Wan-Bissaka had a similar one where he was kind of running back and tried to head it away, and it kind of went straight to
Yeah,
him. And then
fell straight to them.
I think Gordon put it wide. But beyond that, they had 18 shots, but nothing that really threatened us. I think Fabianski made 2 or 3 decent saves, but nothing that really went core. They're going to score here in a minute. They're going to score.
Yeah.
So it was just a really tidy defensive performance, mate. It was good.
Good. What do you make of this Fabianski thing? I think it's like a nice little story. Like he's clearly a consummate professional. He was quite openly unhappy when he got dropped in place of Areola, and we sort of spoke about it at the time, where it's like the harsh decision on Fabianski. He hadn't done anything wrong, but if it would have meant losing Areola if he wasn't number one. Like, I know that for a fact. He'd said, "Look, I'm going if I'm not number one this season." So tough decision to make at the time. Fabianski come out and he wasn't very happy. Spoke on Polish TV, saying he wasn't very happy with. He thinks the wrong decision. He wasn't happy with how it went down and stuff. But yeah, I think it was that. Is it Tottenham away the last game Areola played, where he made a couple of saves, but a couple of ricks as well. Forgive me if he played once more after that, but there had been a few question marks around him, and Fabianski's been brilliant since he's come back in. Obviously, not really a long-term option, but it's one of the things we're blessed with, isn't it? That we've got 2 great goalkeepers. Well, what do you make of all of that?
But I think partly it's down to Areola did have an injury. There was one game when Fotheringham was on the bench instead of him.
Okay. Was that post-Tottenham?
Was post-Tottenham. It was the last game that Areola played, and he was atrocious in that game. I mean, his distribution was the worst I've ever seen it.
But there's a couple of iffy ones perhaps he could have saved, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's just it couldn't kick for Toffee, and it was just silly. So then when Fabianski came in for him in the next game, it's like, well, that's not really a surprise because he was atrocious.
No, but you tell you what, United was the next game, mate, and he was on the bench. He was on the bench for Man United.
Yeah, that's why he got dropped for the United game, but he did miss a game. I think.
Yeah, and then it's the one after that. It was Forest away.
He wasn't on the bench,
where Fotheringham was on the bench and not him. Yeah,
but yeah, it seems like he was back on the bench last night. But it seems like Lopetegui prefers Fabianski, and I did.
Sorry, go on.
I did wonder whether that could be down to the way that we were playing out from the back a lot more, and he trusts Fabianski a little bit better with his feet. I don't know. But also it's probably a case of since he's come in, he's not put a foot wrong, really.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And I think for general squad morale and whatever, I think that's the way you've got to approach it, haven't you? Just say, look, you were my number one, our big Alphonse, but couple of dodgy performances. This is where we want the standards. Lucas has come in, hasn't done anything wrong, so he plays. I really like that. I think it's a positive way to go about it.
And now he's got back-to-back clean sheets behind him as well.
Quite.
So yeah,
stunningly. No, it's good. What would you make of this Vladimir Soufal stuff? Then comments come out in the week. I think the wording was along the lines of, this isn't how I want this to be. If the situation continues with me just sitting on the bench all the time, we'll have to have a look at it. Or basically, in no uncertain terms, I don't think I'll be talking out of turn here, because I wouldn't want to upset Vlad or certainly put words in his mouth. But it's very much that I don't want to be sitting on the bench. If I am, I want to leave. I don't know. If you're him, he obviously was sort of after some more money. I don't think West Ham rewarded him quite as well as he hoped he would be rewarded. He's obviously a little bit older. I'm going to say 32. What do you reckon? Let's have a look now. 32. Excellent stuff. Blimey, he's younger than me. Jesus. I think it's fair to say he looks older than me. So, it's like hardly past it. He's been a real good servant to the club. I think he's great. But I don't know. It's like he's obviously, Wan-Bissaka was one of Lopetegui's signings. The experiment, whether it works or not, that's what he's doing. Like, it's clear he's his number 2 option. What if do you sort of empathise with Soufal, or do you think, come on, mate, you're a professional, you've just got to knuckle down? I don't know how I feel about it, really. Sort of, you kind of go, well, fair enough for having those feelings, maybe. Because I think he walks into certainly any other bottom half of the Premier League club, like, he's a very, very good Premier League level right back, as he's proved. What do you think?
No, I'm not surprised that he's unhappy. But at the age of 32, as a right back, realistically, what you got 2 years at the top level, if that.
Yeah,
that age.
probably.
And he's probably sitting there. Do I really want to just spend the last 2 or 3 years of my career just sitting on the bench?
My 2 prime years on the bench. Yeah, fair enough.
And I don't really blame him for that. And he'd have been watching the whole Wan-Bissaka experiment, probably going, "This isn't working. Give me a go."
Yeah.
And then last night would have seen it pay off and seen his replacement score a goal. And he hasn't scored a goal for West Ham yet, which breaks my heart massively.
Is he not?
He's still not scored a goal. I think in 160 odd games, he's not scored a goal. He's got 20 assists, I think, or 19 assists.
Yeah, he's an assist machine.
No goals. Yeah, I don't blame him. And the fan, any right-minded fan, I think, would go, look, we obviously would love him to stay at the club for as long as possible. But if he wants to go and find somewhere where he's been playing week in, week out in the last couple of years of his career, I think he's well within his rights to do that.
You can't really do. I mean, it's a bit of a risk in January, though, isn't it? Like, don't you? Surely you got to make him wait till the end of the season.
You do that. I mean, I would prefer us to wait till the summer. But you don't know. If he only makes appearances in the last 10 minutes of games between now and January, I would not be surprised if he's knocking on the door going, like, I want to go now. So,
James, I wonder if other people have noticed this, right? It's one of my favourite things about you is how you pronounce the word January, and you just say January. And I've known you for such a long time, and you've always said it like that. And every time you do, I sort of do a little smile inside. And I don't know, it's one of them tiny, weeny little things. But you say January, and I will say January. And I just, it's so stupid, but I just thought now's the time to say it, because I just smiled again.
I mean, I can see you smiling, going,
grinning at your views on Soufal. No, I really like it. I do think, look, he's been a great servant. I do think you go, look, fair enough, mate, got to give us to the end of the year. But then I suppose you could also argue, but no, I would like to keep him, because I think he could play the Wan-Bissaka position. Like, he's an ultra professional. He's super fit, isn't he? Soufal, he's in excellent condition. He's proved that he's good going forward, like with all the assists, certainly last season. Question marks were more around his defensive work rather than, which I thought were a bit unfounded, but rather than his attack. So I think if Wan-Bissaka gets injured or suspended or whatever, I think he's a decent replacement. So, yeah, I would like to, fair enough, understand what he's saying, but I would like to see him stay until the end of the season. And I think from the club's point of view, obviously, you don't want to have miserable players around the camp, but I do think you've got to have a conversation, go, listen, Vlad, like, come on, you've been a good servant here. But I do think a lot of it, to be honest, I'm sort of reasonably well informed on the situation. I think a lot of it, he perhaps doesn't feel like he owes West Ham a favour, because I think he feels a bit miffed about the contract they ended up giving him. Like, he was rewarded, he was given a pay rise, but I certainly don't think it was sort of the level that he was expecting or hoping. So I think he maybe is in the situation where it's like, well, perhaps not feeling particularly valued. Yeah, probably a bit of a victim of a cold, hard business decision, I think, from West Ham. But yeah, interesting to see how that one goes. So what we're saying then, Jonesy, are we? Well, I mean, we'll do Arsenal in a little while, but any sort of thing else on Newcastle that you noticed that was different? Do you think this is our like the starting 11 we had here. Do you think that's it when Alvarez comes back? What do you expect, or do you think for a while? Obviously we still don't know what's going on with Fulkrug. But Arsenal, is it the same team again? And is this our best 11 for the foreseeable? Certainly, I'm glad Somerville played. I know Kudus has got a 700-year ban or whatever, and people will be crying out for him to come back in. But Somerville, I think, has been brilliant, and I think he's a real breath of fresh air. How do you see it once Kudus and Alvarez are back, I suppose? Because for a lot of people, they'd be like, well, how do you not include those two players? But maybe.
Well, I can think of two reasons why Alvarez hasn't walked back in the team, and the 2 red cards he's picked up this season. I think he deserves to get back, walk straight back into the team.
No, quite agree. Yeah,
I
don't want to see Souček dropped anyway.
No, and I think Kudus probably by default does go back in ahead of Somerville. Somerville has been brilliant since he's stepped in.
Not ahead of Soler, or do you think that's too attacking to have all 4 of them on?
I think it is too attacking. But then Kudus has come out quite often and said that he prefers to play behind the striker as a number 10. So maybe that's, I don't know.
And lots of his good work is driving from deep, isn't it? I don't hate him in midfield. It's just whether we think he's disciplined enough to do the off-the-ball stuff, I suppose.
Which is my concern, because that's what Soler was doing well against Newcastle, the off-the-ball stuff.
Yeah.
In a position that was very obvious that was his position, but it's not been obvious before. But yeah, I don't see a route back for Alvarez immediately. I think the midfield we saw against Newcastle is the midfield that should play against Arsenal. Against Newcastle should play against Arsenal.
Yeah.
I see no reason why he should make any changes to that starting 11.
Yeah.
But when Kudus is back, I think Arsenal's his last game of his suspension. I think he will come in for Somerville. Well, Somerville was good against Newcastle. He ran at their defenders quite a lot. I think he had a couple of attempts. It's a good link.
I'd love to be able to have an opinion on it, James, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, with a bit of link-up play with Soler and Antonio on the edge of the box, which was good.
Yeah,
but yeah, Kudus will go straight back in. But Alvarez, I don't know where he fits in that midfield, and I don't know whether him going into that midfield, whether that messes the balance up again. I don't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a difficult one to call.
Anything else then, Jonesy, on Newcastle before we have a look ahead to the Arsenal game?
No, just thoroughly enjoyed every minute of it. It was great.
Great. Major respect to all the fans who went up there for that one as well. But it's an awfully long one.
Was in the crowd.
Was he in the away end?
Carl was in the away end. Yeah, they zoomed in.
Excellent.
It's good to see Carlton.
All right. Well, respect to Carlton Cole as well then for making the trip on a cold Monday night up to Newcastle. Yeah, very, very well deserved. And it's all. I've done sort of enough of those midweek away games to far-flung places in the country to know it all feels worthwhile if you walk away with a win. But obviously that's never guaranteed, particularly this season. So fair play to everyone who travelled. Here you go, Alex. If you're listening, another nice advert slot for you to put in before we look ahead to the Arsenal game. Me and James will have a quick chat about that. You will have a set proposition review podcast later this week, hopefully with the deluded Gooner. But me and James will have a quick chat about it next, so stay with us. Right, James, Arsenal at home Saturday night. Are you taking your father-in-law? It's normally the father-in-law game for you, isn't it? Inter-family wars over the Gooners game.
Yeah, no, but not actually going. I'm not going this weekend. I'm not, because it's our lad's Christmas drinks in Bury St Edmunds with my brother-in-law and a lot of his friends. And it's a big old
Bury St Edmunds now, blimey. It's no longer Bury. This is such a week of change for you, James Jones.
But yeah, we've got like a big Christmas day out. We're doing go-karting and shooting and
sounds really fun.
Things like that. So and because there's a couple of Arsenal fans in the group, we've decided that we will watch it on the TV together. Yeah. And initially I was like, I don't really want to miss the game, and then I remembered the game against Arsenal at London Stadium back in February, where they battered us 6-0 and Declan Rice scored. And I was like, and given I made this decision, I think only maybe 6 weeks ago when we were not in great form. So I was quite happy to go, I think I'll give that one a miss. And now I'm a bit like,
yeah, we're definitely going to win.
But
yeah, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Is your ticket going then?
I will double check. I can't remember whether I said one of my mates could have it, but if not, then yes, it is.
Yeah, I think my dad has just just sort of invited his best mate who supports Arsenal to go with him. So I think I've just been ousted and not really consulted on the issue. So I might take you up on that offer. I feel like, as a West Ham podcast, one of us should go to Arsenal at home and represent. It's not very good for our credibility otherwise, if not. Just a few messages in this week, James. Ryan Cushway, listening to the pod, and big West Ham fan. He did get in touch. I'm not going to read them out, right? Because it's basically him agreeing with loads of my negativity from last week. So I'm giving the listeners a week off. If we get absolutely humped by Arsenal next week, then I can assure you I'll be revisiting said messages and make sure they get aired on the podcast. Right, Newcastle match reaction from Ryan Baker. James, he's been in touch on Instagram. We are West Ham Pod if you fancy getting in touch too. Do I finally see a style? It certainly looked that way to me. Defensively, we looked organised, although there's some big old gaps in the first 20 minutes or so. But they seemed to get on top of that, and there did seem to be much better movement for each other while pressing and going forward. But we need to see more of this. Can't fault the team's effort, but can we do it consistently? Who knows? All I can say is it was more positive. This is Ryan before, who got in touch and said, come on lads, bit of positivity after I think it was the Ipswich game, and then he messaged a week later after we got humped the next week, said what a load of rubbish. So cheers for listening as always, Ryan. Mark Scott has been back in touch. James, the one I said was refusing to listen to the We Are West Ham podcast again if we heated up the old would David Moyes do better than we're seeing debate. So we haven't done that this week, Mark, so I hope you've listened and your boycott hasn't started already, and that you've given us another chance. He said the Olays on 88 minutes must be music to Will's ears. I did think in the build up. I am pleased West Ham won, by the way. Like
the fans were Olaying for much the second half, to be fair. Yeah. There was a lot of Olaying. I think we've got on like a 20 pass combination and be Olayed one, and it was great.
But listen, it was I am pleased when West Ham win. So I hope you've listened this week, Mark, and haven't boycotted us, and that you've enjoyed the positivity around the performance. One thing as well, James, even before we have a chat about the Arsenal game in a bit more detail, I don't think we've spoken about this on the podcast already. Forgive me if I have, if we have, but James can't remember either. But Luke King is an Australian racing driver, a long-term listener to the We Are West Ham podcast. Go on, follow him on Instagram, Luke King Racing, all one word. He's got a very, very cool Instagram profile indeed. Like I say, Aussie racing driver. And last week, out of nowhere, Miriam Errington, who, as everyone who's a long-term listener to the podcast knows, is our very, very, very valued member of the We Are West Ham podcast team. Her company, property conveyancing company in Australia, in Adelaide, sponsored the podcast. Quite frankly, we wouldn't be able to do it if it wasn't for Miriam's generosity and the partnership we've had with her for a couple of years. And out of nowhere, I just saw a post on Miriam's Instagram the other week. Thanks so much to @Luke King Racing for a wonderful day. And long story short, Luke was flying to Adelaide for the Adelaide 500, I believe it's called. Forgive me if I've got that name wrong, guys. to compete, basically like the Indy 500. Big racing, big like Australian race in Adelaide, big one on the racing calendar. He was on the flight listening to the We Are West Ham podcast, and thought he'd reach out to Miriam. He invited Miriam along, gave her a nice day in the posh Porsche exclusive lounge for the race. She got to watch the race, got to meet Luke before, had a chatted about the podcast. And I just want to read out this message from Luke, right? Because it's an absolutely amazing gesture from him, and brilliant to see him rewarding Miriam like that, or such a nice thing to do. Miriam had a blast, and I messaged him, said what a nice thing to do. He said, no worries, I was listening to you guys on the flight to Adelaide and thought I'd reach out to Miriam. One way I was saying thanks to you guys and also to her for supporting a podcast that's really helped me. I was going through a hard time last year professionally in my career as a driver, and in a few other areas where motorsport tests your character. The podcast with you and Jonesy was something I had to look forward to every week and help take my mind off the stress of my sport and the problems I was having. So thanks to you, lads. And I hope something like this shows Miriam that her sponsorship of the pod works to get her name out there. I've been meaning to buy you a coffee for a while, so I'll send something through as a Christmas gift. Jonesy, what a nice message, what a nice bloke, what a nice thing to do, and what a heartwarming thing. I replied, as I'm sure you can understand, and said, you know, it's a big old commitment doing this podcast. We've been doing it for a long time now. It takes a considerable amount of time out of our weeks, and it's stuff like that. This is why I replied and just said, it's that sort of stuff that makes it well worthwhile. But what a lovely gesture, what a lovely bloke.
Yeah, I love it when we get comments like that. It does make it well worth doing, doesn't it? Yeah. Glad that Miriam was able to have a good day out. And if you're ever in London, mate, or the UK, give us a shout. We'd love to get involved as well.
Precisely.
Really nice. Really nice,
it's great, mate.
And a really nice message.
Yeah, somewhat worrying, wouldn't you say, that you and I waffling to each other, just spouting garbage every week, is like helping people through tough times. So there's a bit of a concern.
Especially when I've been accused of in the past of having a voice that could cure insomnia. So I mean, it's questionable, isn't it? But glad we can help at least one person anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, mate, absolutely. But yeah, brilliant gesture, Luke. And go follow Luke King on Insta. He's a great bloke. He's an interesting follow as well, and a big fan of the We Are West Ham podcast. Hopefully there's a few more of you out there that enjoy what me and James do. I mean, looking at the download numbers, it looks like there are. There's quite a few of you actually who seem to enjoy it, or perhaps you're just a glutton for punishment or listening to Wally's. But yeah, no heated up David Moyes content this week, so I hope you've enjoyed that. Arsenal then, Jonesy, Saturday night. You're not going. I feel obliged to go now. I've been ousted by my own father. What I don't know. It's one of those things. They are quite good still. I just worry with, like I was saying, again, obviously we got tonked last season at home, but we stopped them winning the league by beating them at the Emirates. And I think that was, that was always, they're playing tonight in the Champions League away at Sporting. So you'd like to think maybe that will help a little bit less recovery time. You sort of hope for a dip after European fixtures. I don't know. I sort of, my fear with playing the style of football we play, and I think that was one of the things, right? Last season, and one of the things I liked the most about David Moyes was he'd instilled a bit of steel into West Ham, and we would go into games against it seems weird saying this because his record away at the Big Six was never very good, was it? Or it was terrible, in fact. But I don't know why. You just always sort of felt, and maybe the home games were a bit more sort of, just, don't know, felt like you sort of had a bit more of a chance. And I just sort of feel when managers come in, right, it's a bit like that at Brighton. It feels like Brighton always get tonked by Manchester City because they're just Manchester City light. They're just BTEC Man City. They're doing the same things and employing the same principles of football. but then you just come against someone who does it way better and you get slapped. And I just sort of worry with a manager who's trying to be a bit more possession based and trying to play a bit more of a high line. And as we've established, I know we've won at Newcastle, obviously, but we clearly haven't mastered it this season. I just sort of worry that if you then go against Arsenal and try and play them at their own game, you lose. Do you echo that fear? Do you understand that? But do you actually think, and do you think that's what we'll see? Or do you think actually Lopetegui will know he's got a bit of license against a team like Arsenal to go a bit more compact, play a bit more resolute? Not that you always have a choice against Arsenal. They have a lot of the ball. They're an excellent team and they sort of dictate what happens rather than the other team, I guess.
Yeah, I think the system will be very similar, but I think some of the instructions will be a little bit more. We probably would be silly to play a higher line. I think there was enough evidence against Newcastle to suggest that we can be compact when we need to, and we can stop teams that has pace up front when we want to, or that we need to. So I think it will be a variation of what we saw against Newcastle, but maybe a little bit more conservative. I think it has to be against a team like Arsenal. I think with Odegaard now fit again, he makes them tick. Like, they lost a couple of games and then he comes back and then they win. He's so important to them. I think that's going to be a bit of a concern. But I said in my column, mate, I said in my BBC column, I think the game against Arsenal is less about the result and more about the performance.
Yeah, bit of desire.
Based on what we saw against Newcastle, it really felt like against Newcastle something clicked. And it wasn't just, we've managed to scrape it's a smash and grab at Newcastle. Something worked against Newcastle, and now we want to see that kind of performance again against Arsenal. Not expecting us to go and beat Arsenal. If we do, it's a bonus, massive bonus. But it's got to be a performance where you go, we just lost to the better team, but we played okay.
Yeah.
Which happened a lot of times under Moyes, where we did just lose to the better team, but played all right and go, okay, well, that was just fair enough. So if that happens, I think that will say a lot. If we get slapped and it's back to what it was like against Nottingham Forest or Fulham or some of those other games, then it's a concern. But yeah, all I want to see is a performance.
Yeah,
anything,
a bit of desire and a bit of running. Like, I know it sounds
desire,
but that's what I want to see. I'm really buoyed by what you said about the Newcastle game. Just the fact they were running and putting a bit of effort in. Those are the invisible things that people won't feel are glamorous. That's what I want to see against Arsenal. Yeah,
players were playing for each other. It was a lot of work rate. Knew what they were there to do. Yeah. So if we see that against Arsenal, but we lose, 2-0 or 3-0 or whatever, it's like, okay, fine. But it was a similar performance to Newcastle. Something's happening here.
It's sort of less about the outcome, isn't it? I know it sounds silly talking in terms like that. Obviously, you want to get something out of the game, but if you lose to a last-minute winner, that's what the point of making this season, wasn't it? That a lot of the times against these big teams, even if we did lose, we would make it horribly hard for them under Moyes. And a few times, Man City got a few last-minute winners against us, didn't? I know you get a slapping in there every now and then, but these are world-class players. But if, as much as gutting at the time, if you lose to a last-minute goal, you go, well, you're sort of in the game for 89, 90 minutes. Yeah. What was so anger-inducing and disappointing this season is games like Tottenham and considerable amount of games where you're just out of it, like not even close, like you're dead and buried. So you just want to see that's all it is, a clear plan, and players sticking to it and committing to it, really, isn't it?
Yeah. I think
what are you expecting then? Do you think it's going to be try and do that? I can't imagine Wan-Bissaka's going to be. Well, I don't want to see that. It's just like Gabriel Martinelli's good, mark him.
Yeah. I don't really know what to expect, because part of me really, really wants the Newcastle performance to not be a one-off. So much so that it almost feels like an accident that it worked.
Yeah, well, that is the thing, yeah.
But then the other asked me, like, it would just be typical West Ham that, we give the manager 2 games to save his job, two probably the most difficult games to save his job, and he goes and wins both of them. It's almost like we're giving you an ultimatum every 2 weeks now, mate.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah.
Just typical West Ham.
Permanently labouring under the thing of if you lose any games, you're sacked, mate.
Yeah. And part of it's like we might as well do
Forever.
that. It'd be typical West Ham that we would beat them. I really don't know how it's. I don't know. I'm going to say a draw, just because at the moment I'm sitting on the fence and everything.
Yeah, just feels
and a point would be incredible, given we all wrote him off when that ultimatum, when all those reports coming out, he's got 2 games. And in those, for him to get 4 points in those 2 games would be, or even 3 points would just be incredible for me. So,
well, that's already a superb return.
Yeah. So, given that we thought it was going to be 2 defeats and probably like a minus 10 or 11 goal difference off the back of it. As long as we don't get slapped, and we're in the game for the majority of it, and we play well, I'll take it, and I'll take that as progress for me.
Go on, what's the score going to be then?
1-1.
Just say 1-1. I knew you were going to say 1-1. Yeah, fair enough. I don't know. I mean, hard to judge, isn't it? Hard to judge. I mean, they're a good team. You're likely it is you're going to lose the game. But yeah, I just want to see a bit of a battling performance. That's all I'm after, really. Just like, you've tried there, you've properly worked hard, and if you end up getting a point out of it, amazing. But just like make them work for it is what I'm saying. Like make them work hard and dig in. Right, brilliant, James. I enjoyed that. Didn't watch the game, so hard to have too many opinions on it. Perhaps that's the answer, Jonesy. I just don't watch West Ham anymore.
On reflection, you're not having my ticket for Arsenal.
Maybe that's the thing, Jones. I mean, I'm not really one for superstitions and stuff, apart from the 2006 FA Cup final, which I take sole responsibility for West Ham losing, because I had like the same system of getting ready for West Ham games that season, and like it didn't fail. And for the FA Cup final, I like inadvertently broke one of the like steps that I've been doing all season, and it was the last one as well. And I was gutted about it all the way to the game. And then sure enough, it was a last minute goal from Gerrard that denied us glory. So I take full responsibility for that. So maybe I just don't watch the Arsenal game. And then if we win, then I just don't watch West Ham for the rest of the season. We end up finishing in the top 4 because we've just won every game. Right. Enjoyed that, Jonesy. Anything else before we go?
No.
One thing I will say, actually, James, thoughts and feelings on the reaction to your video we put out defending David Sullivan. Feels like a good way to start off. For the international break, lots of things get lost. But that went out. I think it sort of did the rounds on West Ham Twitter. You got a bit of beef and a bit of grief. Thoughts?
Yeah, I took exception to a lot of people that went, but what about the stadium? So I even said in that video, you can be mad about the stadium, but not about this. And I just was like, guys, like if you're going to have a go at me and disagree with me, like do it with a little bit, use your brain and do it do it properly.
Some of them you were getting had a go at for stuff that you had already qualified. This is annoying, by the way. And then people are like, what about this? It's like, no. Like if you listen, that does irritate me. It's like when people just don't listen. But there were a few people just who had listened properly and still taking objection, weren't there?
Yeah, it's very obvious that people don't like David Sullivan and won't have a nice word to say about him, even if he deserves
that's
credit.
Not objective thinking, is it? That's not.
No, and that's why I was getting a little bit frustrated, and then I realised that these people can't be reasoned with, because they've made their minds up and that's it. But it was a little bit annoying. There's a few people that came back and said, I see your point, but I prefer that. But there was a few that kind of riled me up a little bit, and I had a few people just get a bit childish, fully grown men, married men with kids, and behaving like 8-year-olds on social media. It's just embarrassing. So yeah, and but yeah, I stand by everything that I said in that video. Just feel like, you know, if you're going to complain that David Sullivan doesn't spend any money, you're wrong.
When someone shows you and says, "Well, he spent money," you're right. Yeah,
you're wrong.
Like,
you're wrong.
You're wrong about that. That's incorrect.
And another point, I didn't say it in the video. I didn't say it in that podcast, and I really wish I had. I don't think I said it in the best way. But if David Sullivan is 100% to blame for appointing Lopetegui and it not working, then he deserves 100% credit for appointing David Moyes and it working. Right?
Couldn't agree. Yeah, exactly. That's it, isn't it? In a nutshell,
you can't tell me that the bloke doesn't. The bloke's never done anything right. He doesn't deserve any credit. And everything he does is wrong, because he's the guy that's appointed the manager that delivered a European trophy and got us into Europe 3 years running. You can't only have it one way. And that was the thing that annoyed me. And then all the responses to that is, but look, what about the stadium? What about the stadium? It's like, the stadium is irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
But it's and you literally said you can be mad about the stadium, as in, I don't like the stadium either. So that is fine. But what we are talking about, this specific thing, this specific part of it, and on this, here's my opinion on it. And it's like, no, I don't. A few people going, if you're going to say things like that, like we're among the concessions thing, and it's like, hang on a minute, it's totally relevant. Like you saying, David Sullivan does spend money, isn't a ringing endorsement from you about how he may or may not raise that money, right? It's not. I just found it really puzzling. Going, how can you support him when he's doing the concessions? And you're like, well, no, the concessions is bad, which I've obviously said. But like, this isn't a debate around how he raises the money. And someone went, if you're going to pat people on the back for spending money that he's raised by raising ticket prices, then there's no helping you. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. This is a man literally responding effectively to people who say David Sullivan doesn't spend any money. I don't feel like you weren't particularly patting him on the back, were you? No. You were just going like, I'm not sort of saying, well done, Dave, you're amazing. It's just like, but he has spent money. Like, it's not as black and white as people say. I thought it was good points, but
I ended up getting accused of
being a shill.
Yeah, taking money from David Sullivan for saying that he does spend money. I can assure you,
on James,
he does spend money, but not a single penny on me. I'll clear that up right now. But he's more than welcome to. I'll take a brand like Sullivan. I'm not going to say it. I could do with it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it was funny. I must admit though, Joe, one person made a really good point, right? And that's what I do like sometimes, in amongst all of the sort of, dross. There was a couple of really good points. That's why I like, when we're sort of doing a bit, I know we're not great at it, but we try and engage a bit more on social media this season. And I like getting into genuine debates and hearing people's views, as long as they're done in a sort of normal, sane, don't even have to be that respectful, but from a place of respecting someone else's differing opinion. And someone made the point, it's like, well, the man has got an £800 million asset on his hands. He's paying money to maintain the value of it. So, and again, I think a little bit of the suggestion being that you were sort of congratulating me for it, but it was like, I was like, that's fair enough. But it's like that was quite interesting. And I was like, yeah, fair enough. So, but no one's sort of patting him on the back hugely. All we are saying is he doesn't deserve any grief, and you can't say he doesn't spend money. It's just an incorrect thing to say.
Yeah, I remember that the person that said that, and in the same conversation said that he basically made out that him appointing David Moyes and it being a success was an accident. He didn't mean for David Moyes to be a success. He only appointed David Moyes for the purpose of finishing mid-table and not going down. and he didn't mean for it to end up with a European trophy and 3 years
Yeah.
in Europe. It's like,
Yeah.
mate, what the hell are you talking about? I don't understand. Like, what are you arguing there? Are you that stupid to think that football club owners appoint managers but don't want them to be successful, or only want them to be average? Like,
I think surely the point was like he wasn't. It wasn't a brave appointment. He wasn't expecting that to happen, and that it was perhaps a bit of a stability appointment. It's not. It was perhaps he was suggesting that Sullivan would have been surprised by the glorious returns that he got from the David.
Well, everyone was surprised, but that doesn't mean to say. But it goes back to my original point. If you're going to put all the blame on David Sullivan for Lopetegui, then you've got to give him all the praise for David Moyes, regardless of whether people expected David Moyes to be the success that he was or not. The fact is, he appointed him twice, and it worked. So you can't have it both ways. But yeah,
I think it was odd. I think the world we live in these days, right? So many things are polarized. Yeah, it's either black or it's white. It's either yes or it's no. It's either Republican or it's Democrat. You're either right wing or left wing. You're either whatever. That particularly on Twitter, let's be honest, there just isn't really room for nuanced debate. When actually the reality of it in football and in society in the world is that most people, in most situations, operate in the vast grey areas between the two, extremes of any situation or viewpoint or whatever. But it just seems odd that you were making a fairly it's only you sort of knew as soon as we posted it would get a bit controversial, go a bit viral because it's David Sullivan. It's such a controversial thing to do, and it's almost we live in this space now where anything other than ultra hatred for him is just billed as, oh, you're a massive supporter, then you're a David Sullivan shill, whatever it is. And it's like, no, James is just expressing a view which comes from, which most sort of reasoned people have on things, is that nothing is black and white, is it? Is that James has expressed a reasoned view, acknowledging the nuances and complexities of a situation, acknowledging some of the bad stuff, and also going, there's some good thrown in there as well. And it's just weird that even that, a fairly inoffensive, sensible-ish thing to say, is met with such vitriol.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know why I'm surprised.
No.
I mean, I wasn't really. It was as soon as I saw it go up, I was like, here we go, tuck in.
I just can't stand it when you have adults that these adults.
You love a Twitter battle, though. You're one of these married adults.
I'm quite happy to have a debate with someone and then agree to disagree, or just go, look, mate, I see your point, but I do disagree, and this is my point, and we can go our separate ways, and everyone's happy. When you get people calling you names or accusing you of stuff, or mate, you are a child. You are
the old
on the
Sullivan.
internet.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, the old you're a Sullivan shill. That one is just so stupid. It's like, what? Any opinion expressed other than poisonous hatred means you're on the payroll. It's just it's like, really, come on.
You get people just they have this shit that just real lack of any ability to have a conversation with someone without the moment they disagree with them calling them names and judging them. And I'm just
Can you tell me any of the names you got called? Did you get called any names?
Not on a family friendly podcast.
Oh, right, fine.
But I can't actually remember what they were now, to be fair. But
I haven't left a lasting impact.
It's all just a little bit ridiculous, when you've got people like that. It just
one thing I would say, Jonesy, and obviously I was devastated to see this for you. It appears that your latest self-help book on Stoicism, which was serving you so well, appears there might be some cracks in that theory because some of your responses weren't overly stoic.
No, they weren't. It's an ongoing practice. Right,
okay. There will be chinks in the armor.
You never really. It's almost like religion. You're always learning. You're always practicing it. You're never really perfect.
You never complete it.
No, you just got to keep working it. Keep working hard.
Yeah.
Every day's a new day.
Yeah, right, love it, mate. Right, brilliant. Aaron Stokes, by the way, I texted him the Newcastle. He was our opposition view guest, Newcastle correspondent for the Newcastle Chronicle. I just texted him after the game, said, "How the hell have we done that?" And he said, "Mate, I knew we were all too confident up here. At least you boys get a positive podcast for a change." Well, I would say that has been an extremely positive podcast indeed. I've enjoyed it. James, Arsenal at home Saturday night, 5:30 at London Stadium is next up. West Ham are still 14th in the Premier League, a long way to go. But perhaps, just maybe, there's a future in this way of playing after all. So says James Jones. I'll need a little bit more to be fully convinced, but I've enjoyed a West Ham win away, particularly for the 3,000 or so die-hard Hammers fans that went all the way up to Newcastle on a freezing cold Monday night. You deserved that more than any of us. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm sure you did. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast as well. Do us a favour. Follow us on socials, as always, at @WeAre_West Ham on Twitter, We Are West Ham Pod on Instagram, wearewesthampod@gmail.com if you want to email us. Slide in the DMs, let us know what you're thinking about the team, and sort of get stuck in on the comments to all the clips that go up. But go and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you can. That'd be handy. If you do one thing for us coming up to Christmas, that would be a nice Christmas present. Probably a little bit early for that on the 26th of November. But yeah, keep listening. Share the podcast if you think someone would like this. Shout out to Simon Hutchinson, by the way, who I was passed a compliment to. Says he agrees with a lot of the stuff we say. He's enjoying listening to the pod recently. So this will be a test. It was my dad who passed on the compliment. So if he does actually listen, I'm sure I'll get a repeat compliment in the weeks to come. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you do like the podcast, just send it to someone this week. If you like the episode, you're right at the end now, so you've got no excuse. Open your phone up, click on the share button, which will be on there. Send it to someone and just say, "Have you listened to these boys before?" Yeah, I really like them. Give them a go. That would be really helpful and friendly if you can do that. So if you only do one thing, don't worry about the socials. Just do that for us. Yeah, recommend us to someone. That would be great. Thanks for listening. West Ham are massive. Up the Hammers. Arsenal at home Saturday night. You'll have an opposition view with hopefully the deluded Gooner later on this week, and then me and Jonesy will be back as usual early next week. Thanks for listening. Come on, you Irons.